Hey, what's up, everybody? We are back with the second part of the walk to run to sprint. And this one is a standalone video. You can kind of use it to build off of the first video, but you don't necessarily have to implement that one. This one kind of shows you how to set up the sprint ability without doing the first part. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first thing I'm going to do is demo the sprinting ability. So if I go ahead and load Lyra up, the character will drop in. I'm just going to use the keyboard and mouse on this one, but as I move forward, just kind of the regular running. If I hold down Shift, he sprints. Notice a little debug in the top left. I'll show why that's important. But as I run, if I run backwards and try and sprint, he's not going to sprint. If I run forward, he'll sprint. As I kind of come off, I can hold the keyboard down. He ends the sprint. Notice the debug on that shows, but if I hold it down and go forward again, he still runs. So that is the sprinting ability, and I will show you how to do that. To add the sprint ability, we're going to get into about 8 different parts. Seems like a lot, but they actually flow from one to the other, so it's not too much work. We'll try and go through this pretty quickly. The first one that we're going to do is actually create the ability. I have mine all under the shooter core content. I've got another project that I'm working on. They're in a different location, but basically where you have this dash ability, you can go ahead and add it there. I've set it up in a separate folder. If we go ahead and open that up, I will show you how this works. So running through the ability, we've got the activate ability. From there, what I do is I've added kind of a forward movement check. I actually just pulled all of that straight from the dash. So if you open up the dash ability, that is again back kind of in the location that I mentioned, but going into the dash ability, what we'll do is this get direction. I basically just copied all of this code. So you'll copy this and then go ahead and paste it into here. You can collapse it down into a node like I have. If you notice, this is what I've done. You don't need all of the information. I don't know if I've deleted everything, but save off of here, just this one. Kind of follow the yellow lines, pause the video if you need to, check to see which ones are connected into where. It's kind of a big overview. Going back, zooming in. This shows you which one to plug in. I will show you why I've done that in a little bit, but basically that is where I am pulling from. All right, so once you have that copied, let's go ahead and go back through the code on the actual ability. So the first thing I've done is I've set a default variable. I've set this to 600. I like setting this 600 as the default. I can play with it later. I've done it where you set it when you start the ability, you kind of recall it. The issues with that though is I ran into some issues where when I was sprinting the character, it was resetting defaults. If you cancel some of the ability later, I'll show you that. The defaults don't necessarily always return. It kind of gets messed up. So if I set it at default, I'm never actually setting the default. I'm only calling the default max speed. Makes it easier. So after this check, I print out some stuff to the debug. Notice the end ability is here if it's something that you are not moving forward. That is when the character was kind of running on an angle. I noticed that I was playing with the different keys. If my character started to go to the left or to the right, the sprint ability would still have him sprinting. So he ends up running backwards, at a full sprint, which just looks awkward. So from here, I'm going to set the max walk speed, not the default max speed, but the max walk speed. So that's something that's being pulled off of your character, your Lyra character. So you grab that, you're going to get the character movement, and then you pull the max walk speed. I multiply this by 1.4. However you want to set that up, you can have pulling off, say, a game instance where you've got character, if you've got abilities, and you set those, if your character levels up, things like that, you can change this, have, 1, 2, 3. There's another spot where I can show you where the, I think the abilities are set on some sort of skill level. I can show you all that in a second. So, but from there, I multiply by 1.4, and I'm going to set that as the max walk speed. Again, I have some printing of some debug. Here's where you're going to put its wait, input, release. So if you just type in wait, input, release, it's right here. You're going to connect that in. This is actually fairly important. So I have a branch where I'm checking that forward movement speed again. It's just I think I just copied the, I could probably collapse it into a macro, but this is just faster. You're going to delay. Usually 0.2 is going to give you a little over a frame. I couldn't notice any difference. I think I was running 60 frames a second, so didn't notice any difference. But if you constantly do this check, that's what gives it when the character starts to move in a different direction. The ability will cancel automatically for you. So if that fails, then you'll end the ability. Going back to the end ability. Again, I have it printing out for the debug, but this is where we're going to then set that max walk speed on the default. I'm never actually setting it up and setting it back down. I leave that default max speed and only ever call it. I don't set it. I guess if you wanted to have your default max speed as 400 or 800, you could always set that. If you want to pull that off of something on the game instance, like I mentioned earlier, if you've got different ability levels, you can kind of pull that off and set that here. So once you end it, you're just going to set the max walk speed back to the default. The next thing that you have to do is you're going to go back up to your class defaults right here. So under the class defaults, you want to add these tags. So I have ability, type, action. I've added sprint. Under the cancel abilities, this is where I have the aim down sights, and it's important to have that so your character is not running. I think I mentioned in the first video, I'll show you in a later video how to add some animations, but this makes sure that your character will go back into that aim down sight walking state. You can play with it if you want, but what I've noticed is the character kind of gets a little wonky. This makes sure that if you aim down the sights, that once you sprint, the aim down sights cancel. Once you, stop aiming down the sights, your character will go back into a sprint. The last thing that you want to do is on the activation owned tags, you're going to have event.movement.sprint. If you're not sure how to do those, it's not too hard. You're just going to find event, movement. Under movement, that's where you can hit this little add button right here, and you're just going to type sprint. I've already got it in here, so I don't need to do that, but add it, hit enter, and that will save that. From here, we are going to go into the aim down sight ability. So that's going to be under your plugins, your shooter core, input, and abilities. So if you open up the aim down sight, what we're going to add is the sprint tag onto the cancel ability and the block ability. What this does is if you are sprinting, your character will stop sprinting. They'll kind of come into that walking animation. And if you are sprinting, if you are aiming down the sights, this will stop the sprinting ability. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add this input action. That is going to be under your inputs. It's under the main content and then under actions. So you would just right click and put input actions, and it's going to give you the player mappable the input action. Sorry, that one. You can name it whatever you want. I kind of follow this standard Lyra naming convention, but going in here, I have it just as a bool. You're going to add one element, and I have it as a pressed. You can play with this if you want it to be a hold or hold and release. I like pressed. I don't know if you noticed when you hold down the shift button, I also will show you on the if you have a gamepad. This is it's a hold. If you have it as a hold, you can do it with the toggle. Just play around. I think the toggle is down. I don't remember. Play with it. Check that out. I have it as pressed, and this makes it you press and you hold it to activate the input ability. Once that one is done, there's two places that you're going to have to add that, and that is into the input data hero and the ability set. The input data hero is back under your input, and that is this one right here. So we'll open it up. You're going to go ahead and this is the button. You're going to add an element. This is where you will select your input ability. Your input action, sorry. And then you're going to add the input tag ability sprint. So just the same way that you kind of added the others, you can type it out, but this is the tag that you're going to want. The second one is going to be your ability set shooter hero. That is under your plugins, shooter core content, game, and that's going to be this one right here. Open this one up, you're going to do the exact same thing. You're going to add the element. This one, however, this is where you're going to add your actual ability. This is the ability level that I was talking about if you want to pull something off, or if your character levels up, things like that. That way you can kind of add it, modify it to have, if a character can level up their sprinting and they go faster. But again, this is where you want to have your input tag, ability, sprint. Once you have those, the next step is you're going to add the mappings. So I've got the gamepad and the keyboard and mouse. You open up either one of those. What you can really do is basically just copy, say, the dash. Now, what I've done is I've actually taken out the dash. I'm not using that. So I've mapped it to the same buttons. This is the gamepad. This is the keyboard. If you noticed, I think I changed that to G. I think it was originally the left shift, but I've changed mine. I'm not going to be using the dash ability. I'll probably end up deleting it completely. I don't think I have it on my other project, but this is kind of the project that I play with. I make stuff, I break stuff all the time. Once I have it working, then I reprogram it into my other project. So basically just copy all of this information right here. As you can see, I've got both of these up. So I've gone through and copied most of this information. So ability_sprint, this is going to be under the player mappable options. So you've got the keyboard and mouse right here and the gamepad right here. So take a look, pause the screen if you need to so you can copy this information. If you have any questions, obviously just leave it in the comments. I will try and answer that if there's anyone having issues with this. But the final thing is I will once again kind of show it off to demo it to see that it is working. So back in the shooter gym, we are going to hit play. I don't think I demoed the aim down sights earlier, but let me go grab she stole both of my guns. So let's grab this gun and I'm going to sprint. And as I aim down the sights, notice the character starts walking again. I'm still holding the shift button down, so when I let go of the aim down sights button, he goes right back into a sprint. So that is the sprint ability. Next time I will add in the animations. I don't know if I found a sprinting animation that I like yet. I think I've got a couple different ones. I will play around with those and I will let you guys know next week. Again, hate to say it, like, subscribe. If you have any questions, comment. I will try and answer all of those. I will answer all of those for you guys. And then I will see you later.